The moment I realized what I'd done, every drop of blood in my body turned to ice. My trembling fingers hovered helplessly above my phone, trying to unsend a message that had already been delivered. But it was too late. The little blue checkmark blinked back at me like a cruel smirk, confirming what my mind refused to accept. He'd seen it. The ultrasound. The one image I'd sworn no one else would ever see. My knees gave out, and I collapsed onto the worn couch, its springs biting into my legs. Outside, rain drummed against the window pane, a steady, merciless rhythm that mirrored my heartbeat. I had meant to send it to my sister, Isla, the only person who knew about the pregnancy. Instead, I'd sent it to him, a man whose real name I had learned far too late, a man whispered about in back rooms and bars, feared by men twice his size. A man whose touch had felt like sin, and whose absence had haunted me for 12 weeks and 3 days. Dante Morello. The phone buzzed in my hand. 3 dots appeared. He was typing. I should have thrown the phone across the room, but I couldn't. I couldn't look away. That's my child. 3 words. No question mark. No confusion. Just absolute, chilling certainty. I pressed my fist against my mouth to stop the cry rising in my throat. The walls seemed to close in, thick with the scent of old coffee and damp carpet. I hadn't seen him since that night, the night that still haunted my dreams. And now, one careless tap of my finger had ripped open everything I'd tried to bury. Before I could breathe, the screen lit again. An incoming call. His name glared back at me. Dante Morello. Above it, a photo. One I'd never taken. Me. Leaving my apartment yesterday. My stomach lurched. He'd been watching me. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th, I answered, but said nothing. Silence stretched between us, heavy and electric. Then came his voice, low, deep, threaded with danger. Open your door, Mia. My heart froze. What? I whispered. I'm outside. The line went dead. For a long, fragile second, I just stood there, staring at the door. My apartment suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Fear clawed up my throat, but beneath it, buried deep where I didn't want to look, something else stirred. Curiosity. Part of me wanted to see him again, to prove he wasn't real, that the man who had once made me forget who I was hadn't found me. But another voice inside me whispered, "Don't open it. Don't let the devil in." My hand hovered over the lock. If you were me, alone, terrified, holding the secret of a life inside you, would you open the door, or would you run? That thought echoed through me as I peered through the peephole. He stood there, perfectly composed, rain clinging to his black suit like liquid silk, his dark hair slicked back, his sharp jaw cleanly shaven. Behind him, a man built like a tank scanned the hallway. Dante's presence filled the corridor like a storm waiting to break. I should have stayed quiet, should have turned off the lights, hidden until he left. But people didn't ignore Dante Morello. They survived by obeying him. With a trembling breath, I unlatched the chain and opened the door a few inches. "How did you find me?" My voice was softer than I intended, and somehow steadier. His gaze swept down to my stomach, still flat beneath my oversized sweater, before finding my eyes again. "I never lost you, Mia." Something in the way he said my name made my heart twist, made fear taste dangerously like longing. "What do you want?" He stepped closer, his voice velvet and steel. "Let me in. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. The child you're carrying says otherwise." I should have slammed the door, should have screamed, called someone, done anything except what I did next. But my hands moved on their own. I unlocked the chain and let the storm inside. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood, and smoke filled the room. He didn't have to say a word. His presence alone commanded obedience. He took in the apartment with one slow glance, every detail weighed and catalogued. 12 weeks, he murmured. His eyes met mine again. "You've known about my child for 12 weeks and didn't think to tell me?" "I didn't think you'd care." A humorless smile ghosted across his lips. "You thought Dante Morello wouldn't care about his heir?" The word heir made me shiver. "I was going to take care of it myself," I lied, clutching my stomach. His gaze darkened, his voice a low growl. "That was never an option. It's my body, my choice." He stepped forward until there was barely space between us. I could feel the heat of him, smell the faint trace of rain still clinging to his skin. The moment that child was conceived, it became mine too, he whispered. And I protect what's mine. My breath hitched. I hated the way his words made my pulse quicken. I should have been furious, terrified, anything but drawn to him again. What do you want from me? He straightened. Every inch the ruthless man I remembered. Pack a bag. You're coming with me. I stared at him, disbelieving. What? You're not safe here. His voice carried no room for argument, only finality. And in that moment, standing there with the rain roaring outside and his gaze locking onto mine, I realized something terrifying. Whatever came next, I was already his captive. Hey, before we continue, if you're feeling the story so far, please tap that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this with someone who loves deep stories too. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Now let's return to the moment everything changed. Before that night, the night he showed up at her door, Mia Thompson's life was painfully small. A single-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city, peeling wallpaper, a refrigerator that hummed too loud, the kind of quiet that didn't soothe, only reminded her of how alone she really was. Most nights, she came home after double shifts at the diner, her hands raw from scrubbing, her body aching. She'd sit by the window, watching the city lights blur through rain and exhaustion, whispering to herself that she was fine, that she didn't need anyone. She'd spent the last 2 years surviving on that lie. Her parents were gone, killed in a car accident when she was halfway through nursing school. She dropped out, used what little money they'd left to cover rent, and started waitressing to stay afloat. Isla, her younger sister, lived 3 states away in Chicago, calling whenever she could, begging Mia to come live with her. But Mia couldn't. The city was all she had left of the life she'd planned, and leaving felt too much like giving up. Until he walked into her life. Dante Morello had appeared one night at Bellini's, the Italian restaurant where she worked. He'd sat in her section, alone. His dark eyes scanning the room like a predator in familiar territory. He wasn't loud, he wasn't showy. He didn't need to be. People noticed him because of what they felt when he entered. Like the air itself bowed in deference. She'd tried to ignore him, but he'd requested her specifically. And when he'd finally looked up at her, really looked, something inside her shifted. She couldn't name it then, but she'd later recognize it as the moment her life began to tilt. Now, 12 weeks later, Dante stood in her apartment, the same intensity in his gaze, but colder somehow, sharper. He moved with unhurried confidence, every motion deliberate. His wet jacket hung perfectly on his shoulders, his presence swallowing the cramped space whole. Your apartment isn't secure, he murmured, glancing toward the single deadbolt on her front door. And you're still using that old phone model. It's easy to track. I don't need your advice, Mia snapped, trying to ignore the way her voice trembled. Or your surveillance. His eyes flicked to hers, unreadable. You need protection. I need you to leave. I can't. Something in his tone, the finality, the steel, made her pulse stutter. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You think I don't know what it's like to be hunted, Mia? You've been followed for days. The words hit like a gunshot. What are you talking about? He pulled his phone from his pocket, swiped, and handed it to her. On the screen, a grainy photo of a man standing across the street from her building. A man she hadn't noticed. A man holding a camera. Her stomach dropped. Who is he? She whispered. Someone working for a family that doesn't like mine. Dante's expression darkened. They saw you with me that night. They saw you leave my suite. They've been watching you since. Mia shook her head, refusing to believe it. This is insane. Why would anyone care about me? His gaze drifted to her stomach. Because of what you're carrying. The word sent a chill racing through her veins. He paced the small living room, the soft thud of his shoes almost rhythmic. There are people who would use you, Mia. Use our child. That's why you're coming with me. Her laugh came out broken. You keep saying our child like you've earned the right to those words. Dante stopped. His silence was heavier than shouting. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, raw. I didn't earn it, but I will. The words disarmed her. Mia's arms fell to her sides, her body trembling from more than fear now. You don't even know me. she whispered. That night, it wasn't supposed to mean anything. Maybe not for you, he said softly, but it meant everything for me. The rain outside intensified, battering against the glass like an omen. The dim light flickered, reflecting off the tears she didn't want him to see. Mia sank into the couch, pressing a hand to her abdomen. The reality of her situation, her isolation, her exhaustion, her pregnancy, pressed down all at once. For the first time in weeks, she felt the full weight of it. She wasn't ready to be a mother. She wasn't ready to belong to a man like Dante Morello. And yet, looking up at him, something deep inside her whispered a terrifying truth. Maybe she'd never been ready for anything until now. A thought flickered in her mind, a question she couldn't silence. What would have happened if she'd told him the truth from the beginning? Would he have still come for her? Would he have protected her? Or destroyed her? And beneath that, another thought, quieter, darker. Why did part of her hope it was both? The storm outside had only grown louder, the rain now a living thing clawing against the windows. Inside, silence pressed thick between them. Mia's mind churned, fear, disbelief, anger all colliding like glass shattering in slow motion. You can't just walk in here and decide what happens to me, she said, her voice trembling but fierce. You don't own me, Dante. His eyes softened just slightly. No, but I protect what's mine. I'm not, she began, but the words caught when his gaze dropped to her stomach again. He took one step forward. That child connects us, Mia, whether you want it to or not. The quiet conviction in his tone frightened her more than threats ever could. He wasn't trying to intimidate her. He was stating a truth he'd already accepted. Mia shook her head, her hand gripping the arm of the couch. You don't understand. I don't want your help. I don't want any of this. I know, he said simply, but wanting and needing are two different things. His calmness terrified her. He wasn't angry. He wasn't pleading. He was certain. And certainty in a man like Dante Morello was a weapon sharper than any knife. He turned slightly, scanning the small apartment again. You have 5 minutes to pack. Her chest tightened. What? I've already sent my men to secure the building. If you stay here, you won't last the night. You're lying. I wish I were. He tapped his phone, then held the screen toward her. The image made her blood run cold. Ryan, her ex-boyfriend. The one who disappeared almost a year ago, leaving nothing behind but a half-paid rent and the ache of betrayal. In the picture, he was gaunt, his face drawn tight, standing in an alley beside a man with a gun tucked beneath his coat. The timestamp was yesterday. Mia's throat went dry. Where did you get this? From the people watching him, Dante replied, his tone clipped. He owes money to the DeLuca family. They've been trying to find leverage. You, Mia, are leverage. Leverage? They know you were with him once. They know you work at Bellini's. And if they know that, they'll soon know about the baby. The air seemed to vanish from the room. Mia pressed a hand to her stomach instinctively. This is insane. Is it? Dante's gaze bored into hers. You sent the ultrasound to me, but how long until someone else finds out? One doctor, one receptionist, one slip, and they'll use you to get to me. She swallowed hard. You're saying they'd hurt me because of you? I'm saying they already planned to. His voice was quiet, but beneath it, there was a current of fury. Controlled, precise, but unmistakably lethal. I can protect you, he continued, but not here. Not in this place with its paper-thin walls and broken locks. I don't need your protection. Yes, you do. He stepped forward until he was close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating off him. And until my child is born, you will have it, whether you like it or not. Mia backed away, shaking her head. I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice. The way he said it, it wasn't cruel. It wasn't even angry. It was just true. When she didn't move, he sighed softly as though she were a stubborn child he had no patience left for. You have 5 minutes, Mia. And if I refuse, then I'll carry you out myself. Her heart skipped. The worst part was, she knew he meant it. Why? She whispered, desperation bleeding through. Why are you doing this? Why do you even care? He studied her in silence for a moment, then said, "Because I don't fail the people I'm responsible for." "Responsible for?" "You." Her laugh cracked. "That's not responsibility, Dante. That's control." He didn't deny it. "Maybe they're the same thing." She turned away, moving toward her bedroom, her mind racing. Her hands shook as she yanked open drawers, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag without thought. Every motion felt unreal, mechanical. Her world, the fragile illusion of independence she'd built, was dissolving beneath her feet. She glanced toward the window, the rain blurring the city lights beyond it. For a fleeting moment she considered climbing out, running. But she could almost feel Dante's presence in the next room, like gravity itself had anchored her there. And then came the whisper of fear, the one she couldn't silence. If what he said was true, if people really were watching her, running wouldn't save her. As she zipped the bag, her eyes fell on the framed photo of her and Isla at her nursing school orientation. Isla's bright smile, her arm wrapped around Mia's shoulders. She grabbed it and tucked it into her bag. One piece of home, one memory untouched by the darkness closing in. When she emerged from the bedroom, Dante was waiting, coat on, phone in hand. His bodyguard stood by the door, impassive and alert. "I told you 5 minutes," he said, checking his watch. "I'm not your soldier." His gaze flicked to the bag in her hand. "Then why are you packed?" Her jaw tightened. "Because I want to live." Something almost like respect flashed in his eyes. "Good answer." The next moments blurred together. Rain, umbrella, the low hum of an engine waiting outside. The city swallowed them whole as they stepped onto the slick pavement. A sleek black SUV idled by the curb. The bodyguard opened the door, and Dante gestured for her to get in first. Mia hesitated on the threshold. The car's interior glowed dimly. Leather seats, tinted windows, luxury wrapped in silence. Crossing that line meant stepping into his world completely. Her stomach twisted. If I get in, there's no going back. She thought of Isla, of the baby, of Ryan's hollow eyes in that photograph, and of Dante, his certainty, his promise, his danger. What if he's the only thing standing between me and something worse? The question echoed inside her. Would you take the devil's hand if it meant saving your child? Mia climbed in. The door shut behind her with a soft final click. Dante joined her, his presence filling the confined space like smoke. The car began to move, the rain blurring the outside world into streaks of gray. For a long time, neither spoke. The quiet was deafening. Finally, she turned to him. "Where are you taking me?" "To my home." "And what happens then?" "Then you're safe." She let out a shaky laugh. "Safe? With you?" His lips curved faintly. "Safer than without me." She looked away, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The city lights flickered across her reflection, two faces overlapping, the woman she'd been and the one she was becoming. A stranger trapped between fear and something dangerously close to fascination. Dante broke the silence. "Your landlord will be compensated. Your job will receive notice of your resignation. Your doctor has been replaced with someone more discreet." Her head snapped toward him. "You can't just rearrange my life like that." "I already have," he said quietly. Her pulse spiked. "You think this is protection? It's abduction." "Call it what you like," he replied. "But you'll live to call it something." The words struck deep. Cold truth wrapped in cruelty. She turned back to the window, the reflection of his face a dark shape beside hers. And though her heart screamed for escape, her mind whispered another truth she couldn't admit aloud. Maybe safety was never what she wanted. Maybe what she feared most was belonging to him. Some choices don't feel like choices at all. Would you have gone with him if it meant saving your baby, or would you have taken your chances with the world outside? The city lights faded behind them, swallowed by sheets of rain and the hum of the highway. Mia sat stiffly in the leather seat, her duffel bag clutched in her lap like a lifeline. Every so often, she risked a glance at Dante beside her, his profile sharp against the dim glow of the dashboard. Expression unreadable. He hadn't spoken in nearly 20 minutes. Neither had she. The silence between them wasn't comfortable. It vibrated with questions she was too afraid to ask. Finally, unable to take it anymore, she said quietly, "You can't keep me forever." "I don't intend to," Dante replied without looking at her. "Just until it's safe." "That's not your decision." Everything about this situation became my decision, The moment you got pregnant with my child. His calmness was infuriating. You make it sound like you planned it. I didn't plan this, he said, finally turning toward her. But I don't run from consequences. Consequences, she repeated bitterly. Is that what I am to you? Dante didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was answer enough. They drove for what felt like hours, trading the chaos of the city for the solitude of the countryside. The rain eased to a drizzle, the rhythmic sweep of the wipers the only sound. Mia's exhaustion began to pull at her, but fear kept her awake. When the car finally turned off the main road, the headlights illuminated tall iron gates flanked by stone pillars. A sleek intercom buzzed, and the gates opened without a word. Mia's stomach knotted as the SUV rolled forward. The driveway curved through dense woods before opening to a sprawling estate, part mansion, part fortress. The house loomed against the night sky, its stone facade glistening from the rain, windows glowing faintly like watchful eyes. Her first thought was that it was beautiful. Her second was that it looked impossible to escape. The car stopped beneath a covered portico. The door opened before she could reach for it. One of Dante's men standing there, his posture rigid, eyes scanning the surroundings even though the storm had quieted. "Stay close," Dante said, stepping out and offering her his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His palm was warm, steady, a dangerous kind of comfort. Inside, the house was silent but alive. Every sound, her footsteps on the marble floor, the crackle of a distant fire, echoed too loud. The foyer was enormous, dominated by a grand staircase and a chandelier that scattered light across polished surfaces. A woman appeared at the top of the stairs, descending gracefully. She looked to be in her 50s, dressed simply in black, her gray hair pulled into a neat bun. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, softened only slightly when they landed on Mia. "Miss Thompson," she said with a faint Italian accent. "Welcome. I'm Mrs. Russo, the housekeeper. Mr. Morello asked that I prepare a suite for you." Mia nodded awkwardly. "Thank you." Dante gestured for her to follow Mrs. Russo, but when Mia moved, he caught her wrist lightly. "You'll be safe here," he said. His voice dropped to something almost tender. "That's my word." Her heart twisted in confusion. It wasn't what he said, it was the way he said it, like a promise that meant everything to him. But what was his word worth? Mrs. Russo led her through a labyrinth of corridors, up another staircase, and into a wing that felt more private, more isolated. The suite she opened was breathtaking, a sitting room with cream-colored furniture, a marble fireplace, tall windows overlooking dark gardens. Beyond it, a bedroom dominated by a bed big enough to swallow her whole. "I hope it's comfortable," Mrs. Russo said. "If you need anything, press the intercom beside the door." Mia glanced around, disoriented. "It's more than I expected." Mrs. Russo gave a kind, understanding smile. "Mr. Morello takes his responsibilities seriously." Responsibilities. The word made Mia's stomach tighten. As the housekeeper left, Mia turned slowly, taking in the room again. Her eyes caught on a door built discreetly into the far wall. She tried the handle. It didn't budge. A connecting door, locked from the other side. She knew without asking that it led to Dante's suite. When she finally sank onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion hit her like a wave. Her body was sore, her mind fractured. For a long time she just sat there, staring at her hands. Everything felt surreal, the way her life had shrunk to fit inside someone else's control. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She wasn't even Mia Thompson, independent and invisible. She was the woman carrying Dante Morello's child. And that title came with invisible chains. Her eyes drifted to the window, where the gardens shimmered faintly under moonlight. Somewhere out there, guards were stationed. Cameras blinked quietly. The estate was beautiful, but it was also a cage. She laid a hand over her abdomen, whispering to herself, "We'll get through this." But her voice trembled, and she wasn't sure if she believed her own promise. A soft knock startled her. She turned as the door opened a few inches. Dante stood there, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his hair slightly damp from the rain. "Can I come in?" he asked. She hesitated. "Do I have a choice?" His lips curved faintly. "You always have a choice. You just don't always like the options." She wanted to hate him for that, But the truth of it stung. He stepped inside, his gaze sweeping over the room before returning to her. Is everything to your liking? It's fine, she said flatly. Though you didn't need to lock the connecting door. I did. Why? For your safety. And your control? She shot back. For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. Both, he admitted quietly. That honesty disarmed her. He moved closer, stopping a few feet away. There are things you don't understand about my life, Mia. The men I deal with, the enemies I've made, they don't play by rules. If they knew where you were, if they knew about the baby, they don't, she interrupted. Not yet, he said. But they will, if I don't keep you hidden. She crossed her arms, defensive. So this is hiding? It's protection. It feels like prison. His jaw tightened. Would you rather I left you out there for them to find? Her silence was answer enough. The firelight from the hearth cast his features in golden shadow. For a heartbeat, he didn't look like the man she feared. He looked almost human, tired, lonely, burdened. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Is it guilt? Possession? Or is it just about control? He met her gaze, unflinching. It's about honor. You gave me something I never expected, and I won't let anyone take it from me. Her throat constricted. There was something in his voice she couldn't name. Not love, not yet, but something dangerously close to devotion. She turned away, unable to hold his gaze. I don't know how to live in your world. You don't have to, he said. Just survive it. He left soon after, the soft click of the door echoing through the silence. Mia stood there for a long time, staring at the space he'd occupied. Every word he'd spoken hung heavy in the air. She didn't know whether to believe him or fear him, maybe both. When she finally crawled into bed, the sheets smelled faintly of lavender and something darker, his cologne, lingering even here. She closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the old house made her jump. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. And beneath it all was the steady, unrelenting rhythm of her heart. A rhythm that no longer felt like it belonged entirely to her. She wondered if safety and captivity could ever look the same. If the hands that cage you can also keep you from falling, could a man like Dante Morello ever protect her without owning her? Morning came too soon. Sunlight cut through the sheer curtains, spilling over the edge of the bed where Mia had finally drifted into uneasy sleep. She woke with a start, momentarily forgetting where she was, until she saw the ornate ceiling, the marble fireplace, the soft cream carpet beneath her bare feet. Not home. Her stomach twisted. The air carried the faint scent of coffee and citrus. Someone had left breakfast on the small table near the window. Fresh fruit, eggs, toast, tea. A single note lay beside the tray, written in precise, deliberate handwriting. Dr. Winters will arrive at 10 a.m. D. Mia frowned. She wasn't sure what unsettled her more, the efficiency or the fact that he'd signed only his initial, as though even his name carried too much weight. She forced herself to eat, every bite tasting foreign, too perfect. Then she changed into one of the soft sweaters that had been stocked in her closet, her size, her style, her color. He knew everything. The appointment room looked more like a luxury spa than a medical suite. Stainless instruments gleamed beside vases of white orchids. Dr. Winters herself was elegant and calm, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands. Miss Thompson, she greeted warmly. You're in good hands here. I've been briefed. Briefed? Mia asked, uneasy. The doctor smiled, unbothered. Mr. Morello spares no effort where protection is concerned. He's arranged for full discretion. No hospital visits, no outside records. It wasn't reassurance. It was control wrapped in courtesy. The ultrasound hummed to life, and Mia lay back, heart pounding. When the tiny heartbeat filled the room, something inside her cracked open. There we are, Dr. Winters said softly. Strong heartbeat. Development's right on track. Mia's throat tightened. She turned her head, watching the small, flickering form on the monitor. It was only a cluster of cells, yet somehow already everything. She blinked back tears. It's really there. Dr. Winters nodded. You're 12 weeks and 6 days, perfectly healthy. A quiet knock broke the moment. Dante stepped inside. He filled the doorway, all dark clothes and darker energy. When his gaze fell on the monitor, the hardness in his expression melted into something else entirely. Wonder. For the first time since she'd met him, Mia saw the mask slip. He approached slowly, as though afraid to disturb the moment. Dr. Winters smiled faintly. "You're just in time, Mr. Morello." He stopped beside Mia, his gaze fixed on the screen. "That's ours?" His voice was barely a whisper. Mia nodded. He exhaled, long and quiet. His hand hovered near hers on the table before he seemed to think better of it. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" "For giving me something real." Her chest tightened at the words, but before she could respond, Dr. Winters handed her a small printed image. "Everything looks excellent. You're both doing well." As the doctor packed her equipment, Dante lingered, still staring at the ultrasound photo like it was holy. When she finally left, the silence between them was heavy, but not hostile. "I've seen death in every form," Dante said quietly. "But that," he nodded toward the image, "that's life. My life." Mia studied him, torn between suspicion and an ache she didn't want to name. "Why do I feel like there's more you're not telling me?" His jaw tightened. "Because there is." Later that afternoon, Mrs. Russo led Mia to a sunroom overlooking the gardens. She was grateful for the space, for sunlight that didn't feel like it belonged to him. But peace was brief. When she returned to her suite, she found her phone on the nightstand, her old phone. She hadn't seen it since the night Dante took her. A single message notification blinked on the screen. From Ela. "Mia, please call me. Something's wrong. Someone came to my building asking about you. Said they were from security. Please tell me you're okay." Her heart lurched. She grabbed the phone, but it was locked. A new passcode. She tried again. Denied. A noise from behind made her spin around. Dante stood in the doorway, his gaze unreadable. "Looking for this?" He held up her charger. "Why is my phone locked?" "Because you can't use it." "Excuse me? It's compromised." "It's my sister!" she shouted, the first crack of real fury breaking through. "She doesn't even know where I am, and you think I'm going to—" "I'm protecting her too," he cut in sharply. "My men are stationed at her building." Her chest constricted. "You had her watched?" "Yes." "Without telling me?" He stepped closer. "If she's in danger because of you, I have to know before they do." "They? You keep saying that like there's a whole world out there waiting to kill me." "There is," he said softly. "Because of me, because of what I am." The admission landed like a thunderclap. He crossed to the window, hands in his pockets, his reflection ghosting against the glass. "When you met me, Mia, it wasn't an accident. You need to understand that." She froze. "What are you saying?" He turned to face her. "I knew who you were before that night. I'd seen you at Bellini's before. You were connected to someone I was investigating. Ryan Barnes." Her breath caught. "You... what?" "I was watching him. He was leaking information to the DeLucas, using your name, your address, to cover his tracks." Mia's pulse thundered in her ears. "So you targeted me?" "I approached you because I wanted to know if you were involved." She stared at him, stunned. "So everything that happened between us, was part of your investigation?" "No." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "That part wasn't planned. That night was real." She laughed, hollow and disbelieving. "Real? You manipulated me from the start, and now you expect me to believe it was real?" "I never meant for it to happen that way," he said, taking a step toward her. "But once I knew you, once I touched you—" "Don't!" she snapped. "Don't you dare make this sound romantic." The silence stretched. Her breathing came fast and shallow. "You don't understand," he said softly. "If the DeLucas find out who you are, that you're carrying my child, they won't stop. They'll use you against me, against everything I've built. So this," she said, gesturing around the room, "this isn't about me. It's about control. About power." His eyes darkened. "It's about survival. You lied to me. I protected you." Her voice broke. "You don't get to decide which of those is better." She turned away, tears blurring the room. Her mind spun back to that night at the restaurant, the way he'd looked at her, The way he'd touched her like she was something precious. Had any of it been real? Her heart screamed yes. Her mind whispered no. And the worst part was, both could be true. He moved closer, his tone softer now, almost pleading. You have to understand, Mia. I didn't plan to fall for you. I just did. She froze. Fall for me? I wanted to tell you, he said quietly. But if I had, you would have run. And if you'd run, he trailed off, shaking his head. You'd be dead by now. She stared at him, the truth sinking like lead. Every moment between them had been built on a foundation of lies, and yet she couldn't stop the ache in her chest, because even now, part of her still wanted to believe him. Was it possible to fall for someone you should fear? The thought terrified her more than anything else. Mia's knees felt weak. She sank onto the edge of the bed, pressing a hand to her stomach. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't raise a child in a world built on blood. Dante knelt before her, his eyes fierce and desperate. Then let me change it. For you. For them. She looked down at him, the man who had lied, manipulated, and yet somehow made her feel seen for the first time in years. I don't trust you, she said softly. He nodded. Then trust what I'll do for you. When he left, the room felt colder. The echo of his words stayed long after the door shut. She sat in silence, staring at the ultrasound image still on the nightstand. That tiny heartbeat didn't care about lies or power or vengeance. It only wanted to live. And maybe, just maybe, so did she. Could love ever grow from deception? Mia didn't know yet, but part of her feared that even knowing the truth, she'd still fall anyway. The night after Dante's confession stretched endlessly. Mia sat alone by the window of the suite, watching the last threads of daylight vanish beyond the trees. Rain had returned, faint but persistent, the kind that clung to glass and whispered secrets to anyone listening. She hadn't left the room all day. Food had come and gone. Mrs. Russo had knocked softly, asked if she needed anything, but Mia couldn't answer. What could she say? Her world had collapsed quietly, without an explosion, just a slow implosion inside her chest. He'd lied, he'd targeted her, and still, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at the ultrasound screen, as if it was the only pure thing left in his life. That image cut deeper than the lie. By midnight, she couldn't stand the four walls anymore. She slipped into a cardigan and wandered the corridors. The house was silent except for the low hum of security lights and the occasional whisper of footsteps far away. Every hallway looked the same. Marble, oil paintings, expensive emptiness. She wondered how a man could live surrounded by such beauty and still carry so much darkness. Then she found the door. It was heavy, oak, different from the others, slightly ajar. Inside, faint light glowed from beneath the crack. Curiosity tugged at her. She pushed it open. The room beyond wasn't like the rest of the house. No chandeliers, no polish, just concrete walls, a long table, and a map covered with red-pinned photos. Her stomach twisted. Each photo was of people, men in suits, alleyways, cars, and in the corner, her own face. A snapshot from the diner. Another from the street outside her apartment. Every step closer felt like betrayal all over again. Her name was written beside the image, MIA Thompson. Link, Ryan Barnes. Underneath it, status, protected. She reached out and traced the letters with trembling fingers. Protected. The word looked like mercy, but felt like possession. Behind her, the door clicked shut. She turned sharply. Dante stood there, his expression unreadable, but his jaw was tight, his shoulders stiff. I told you not to wander alone. Mia's voice cracked. You've been watching me, photographing me, even before we met. I had to know who I was dealing with. Who you were using, you mean? His silence was an answer. She gestured toward the board, fury bubbling up. Is this what protection looks like? Tracking me like some project? Dante took a step closer. You don't understand. No, she cut him off, voice trembling. You don't. You think locking me in a mansion and surrounding me with guards is love? It's fear. It's control. And I'm done being controlled. She brushed past him, heading for the door. He caught her wrist, not roughly, but firmly. Where would you go, Mia? The DeLucas are closing in. Ryan's already switched sides. She froze. Ryan. He sold information last week. He gave them your hospital records. Her heart dropped. You're lying. I wish I were. He released her wrist slowly. They know you're pregnant. They know it's mine. The world tilted. She stumbled back, one hand gripping the table for balance. Then I'm already dead, she whispered. Not if you stay here. She looked up at him and saw it. The fear he hid behind authority. The desperation he disguised as strength. You can't save everyone, she said softly. Maybe not, but I can save you. Later, she sat by the fireplace, clutching the ultrasound photo like a talisman. Dante stood across the room, speaking quietly into his phone in Italian. She couldn't understand the words, but his tone told her enough. Something was happening. Something bad. When he hung up, his expression was darker than she'd ever seen. What is it? She asked. They found the doctor who handled your first tests. Her stomach tightened. Dr. Reyes? He nodded grimly. She's missing. Mia's blood ran cold. Missing? They're cleaning up loose ends. She stood, panic rising. I need to go to Isla. She's not safe. She's being watched, he interrupted. My men won't let anyone near her. You said that before, she shouted, tears streaking down her cheeks. And look what's happening. He stepped forward, his voice low. If you leave this house, they will find you within an hour. You'll be dead before nightfall. I don't care. Yes, you do, he said fiercely. Because you're not alone anymore. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away, backing into the wall. I don't know who you are, she whispered. You keep saying you want to protect me, but all I see is a man who destroys everything he touches. He froze, the words hitting their mark. Maybe, he said quietly, but I've never wanted to destroy you. For the first time, she saw it, the exhaustion in his eyes, the lines carved deep by years of violence and guilt. He wasn't invincible. He was breaking too. That realization terrified her more than his strength ever had. He turned away, staring into the flames. I built this empire to keep my family safe. My mother, my brother, all gone. My father murdered. Every choice I've made since was to survive what they didn't. And now? She asked. Now I have something to lose again. The storm outside intensified. Wind howled through the trees, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the house, alarms began to chirp faintly. One, then another. Dante's head snapped up. Stay here. What's happening? He was already moving, gun drawn from beneath his jacket. They found us! Chaos erupted. Mia's heart hammered as voices shouted in Italian down the hallway. Footsteps thundered. A gunshot cracked, muffled but unmistakable. She backed toward the wall, clutching her stomach, every instinct screaming run. The door burst open. A man she didn't recognize stumbled inside, bleeding, frantic. One of Dante's guards. Signor Morello! They breached the south entrance! Dante appeared behind him, firing once over his shoulder. Get her to the vault! The guard nodded, grabbing Mia's arm. Come! But Dante's hand shot out. No one takes her but me! He seized her hand, pulling her through a side door that led into a narrow corridor. The air smelled of dust and gunpowder. Where are we going? She cried. To the basement. There's a safe room. Bullets clanged somewhere above. They descended a spiral staircase, each step echoing in the darkness. When they reached the bottom, Dante keyed a code into a reinforced steel door. It swung open with a hiss. Inside, concrete walls, low lighting, shelves of supplies. He ushered her in and sealed the door. Mia's breath came in ragged bursts. How did they find us? I don't know. He checked his gun. Maybe Ryan. Maybe someone inside. You can't fight all of them. His gaze met hers. I can try. No! She grabbed his sleeve, panic surging. Don't go out there. If I don't, they'll come here. He cupped her face briefly, thumb brushing her cheek. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. And then he was gone. Time twisted. Gunfire, shouting, silence, more gunfire. Every sound tore at her nerves. She crouched against the wall, whispering prayers she hadn't said in years. Minutes, maybe hours, passed before the shooting stopped. Then, footsteps. Slow, heavy. She rose shakily, moving toward the door. Dante? She whispered. No answer. Dante, it's me! The footsteps drew closer. Her hand hovered over the lock. Was it him? Or someone else. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Then, 3 knocks. 2 short, 1 long. His signal. She unlocked the door. Dante staggered inside, blood on his sleeve, face pale. "Oh my God, you're hurt!" She reached for him, but he waved her off. "It's nothing. We're clear." "Nothing? You're bleeding!" He sank against the wall, breathing hard. "They're gone. For now." She knelt beside him, hands shaking as she tore fabric from her sweater to press against the wound. He caught her wrist gently. "You're shaking." "So are you." Their eyes met. The room seemed to still around them. He smiled faintly. "You're stronger than you think." She laughed through tears. "You're more stubborn than anyone I've ever met." "Maybe that's why we fit." Her breath caught. "Don't say that." "Why?" "Because if you die, I'll have to believe it." For the first time, she saw fear in him. Not for himself, but for her. He leaned his head back against the wall, eyes closing. "If anything happens to me, don't. You go to Isla. There's money in the vault. A passport." "Dante, stop!" He opened his eyes. "You and the baby live. That's all that matters." Tears blurred her vision. She pressed harder against his wound, desperate to keep him grounded. "Don't you dare make this sound like goodbye." He smiled weakly. "Then make me a promise." "What?" "Don't run from the life waiting for you." In that moment, surrounded by gunfire's echoes and rain's mourning, Mia wondered whether love was always born from chaos. Whether sometimes the only way to find peace was to survive the storm beside the person who caused it. Would you have stayed, knowing he might not come back? Dawn crept in like a ghost, thin, colorless light slipping through the high slit windows of the vault. Mia had spent the whole night awake, her back against the cold wall, her fingers pressed to Dante's wrist to make sure his pulse never stopped. He'd lost more blood than he would admit, but he'd refused to lie down. "If I close my eyes," he'd murmured hours earlier, "I might not wake up." So she kept him talking. About the city, his mother's garden, how he'd once wanted to be an architect before his father's death dragged him into the family business. Now, as the first hint of sun touched the floor, his breathing steadied. He was alive. Relief and anger warred in her chest. "You could have died," she whispered. "I didn't." He opened his eyes. They were darker than ever, but softer too. "You kept me here." "I'm not your nurse, Dante." "No," he said. "You're my reason." The words hung between them. Once they would have felt like chains. Now, they felt like air. When Mrs. Russo finally found them, she gasped at the blood and the spent cartridges scattered near the door. "Signore Morello, we must call the physician." "No hospitals," Dante said automatically, but Mia cut him off. "Yes, we are. He needs stitches." Her tone was sharp, commanding. Even Mrs. Russo blinked in surprise. Minutes later, Mia had cleaned his wound herself with trembling but steady hands. "Hold still," she muttered, threading the needle through torn skin. He didn't flinch. "Where'd you learn this?" "Nursing school," she said. "Before life happened." He gave a rough laugh. "Life happens to both of us." When she finished, he caught her hand. "Thank you. For saving your life? Or for not leaving when I should have?" "For seeing me," he said simply. That afternoon, the house was unnervingly quiet. The guards replaced broken glass, swept up shell casings, erased evidence of the night before. But the silence felt different now, less like a cage, more like the calm after a storm that had burned away illusion. Mia walked through the halls, no longer frightened by their size. She reached the room with the map again. The photos were gone, the board wiped clean. All that remained was a single envelope with her name. Inside, a deed. To her old apartment, paid in full. A letter slipped out behind it, handwritten. "If you ever want to leave, this is yours. No debts, no strings. D." She stared at the words until they blurred. Freedom, real freedom, was suddenly possible. But as she folded the paper, something else clicked inside her. He wasn't the only one who could choose. That night, she found him on the terrace, shirt unbuttoned, bandage stark against his skin. The moon silvered his face, made him look almost peaceful. "You shouldn't be out here," she said. "I could say the same to you." She joined him, crossing her arms against the chill. You gave me back my apartment. It's yours. You deserve to decide where you belong. I haven't decided yet. He nodded, gaze fixed on the horizon. I'd rather you leave free than stay afraid. Mia studied him, this man who had terrified her, protected her, lied to her, and somehow taught her how to stand on her own again. I don't want your empire, she said quietly. But I won't keep running from the world either. If they come for me, I'll face them. He turned to her. That's suicide. No, she said. That's living. For a long moment, he just looked at her, then smiled, the faintest curve of disbelief and pride. You sound like someone who finally remembers who she is. Maybe I do. She reached into her sweater pocket and handed him the ultrasound photo, now worn at the edges. Keep it, she said. I'll have a copy. You sure? Yes. You need a reminder of what you're fighting for. He took it carefully, like it might break. What about you? I have the real thing. She placed her hand over her belly, small but unmistakable now. He swallowed hard. Mia, don't say anything, she interrupted gently. Just listen. He nodded. I don't know what's next. Maybe I'll go back to the city. Maybe I'll finish school. But whatever happens, I'm not a secret you keep locked away. And I won't raise this child afraid of the world you built. He bowed his head. Then I'll change it. Start with yourself, she said. Later, alone in her room, she packed the few things she'd brought, the same duffel from the night he took her. But this time her hands didn't shake. She wasn't running. She was choosing. Before dawn, she left the envelope with his deed on the nightstand beside him, along with a note of her own. You said not to run from life. I'm not. M. She walked out through the still sleeping house, past the guards who didn't stop her, through the iron gates as they swung open to meet the sunrise. Each step hurt, but each was her own. Weeks passed. The city felt different when you returned not as prey, but as someone who'd survived the hunt. Mia found a small apartment near the river, took a job at a clinic, began finishing her nursing degree online. At night, she felt the baby move for the first time. The tiny flutter made her laugh and cry all at once. She whispered, "We did it!" But sometimes, when the wind carried the scent of rain and smoke, she thought she heard his voice again, low, certain, promising protection. And she wondered, can redemption ever be shared? Or must each of them earn it alone? The question lingered, but fear no longer answered it. Strength did. Maybe love isn't about possession or rescue. Maybe it's the courage to let each other live. If you'd lived Mia's life, if the person who once caged you became the reason you learned to stand, would you forgive them? The day it happened began like any other. Gray clouds hovered low over the river, the air heavy with the promise of rain. Mia was finishing up at the small clinic, double-checking inventory, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. He's coming for you. Don't go home. Her heart stopped. It wasn't the message that terrified her. It was the number. Dante's old encrypted line. She read it again. He's coming for you. Before she could reply, another message appeared. Please, Mia, just trust me one more time. Her hands trembled. He hadn't reached out in weeks, not since she'd left his estate. She'd rebuilt quietly. Gone back to work, convinced herself she was finally free. But freedom, it seemed, had been watching her all along. A shadow moved outside the clinic window, a man in a dark jacket, pretending to read a newspaper. Another near the corner. Her breath caught. It's happening again. She grabbed her bag, whispered a quick excuse to the nurse at the front desk, and slipped out the back door. Rain began to fall, thin at first, then harder, slicing through the air like shards of glass. She pulled her hood up and kept walking, fast but steady, her mind racing. Every sound behind her made her flinch. Every reflection in a window made her heart stutter. Then headlights cut through the mist ahead. A black car, the same model Dante used. She froze. The passenger door opened. Mia! It was his voice. He stepped out, rain soaking his coat, hair plastered to his forehead. For the first time, he didn't look untouchable. He looked human, desperate. Get in, he said, glancing around. She shook her head. No, not again. They found you, he said. Ryan led them here. They're already moving. Her breath hitched. Ryan? He made a deal he couldn't keep. They're using him to get to me. Through you. Why should I believe you? Because if you don't, he said softly, you won't live long enough to decide. Something in his eyes, a mix of fear and something rawer, truer, broke through her hesitation. She climbed in. The car sped through the rain-soaked streets, city lights blurring into streaks of gold and red. Mia gripped the seat, her pulse hammering. Where are we going? To end this, Dante said. His voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that came before storms. You can't fight everyone, Dante. I'm not trying to. I'm giving them what they want. Her head snapped toward him. What does that mean? He didn't answer. When the car stopped, they were in front of an abandoned warehouse by the docks. The smell of salt and oil hung heavy in the air. Mia's instincts screamed to run. This is insane, he turned to her, eyes steady. They'll come whether I'm ready or not. At least this way, I choose the ground. I won't let you walk into this alone. His hand brushed her cheek, rain-cold and trembling. You already have. Before she could protest, he pressed a small key into her palm. Back exit. If anything happens, you take this and go to the car. Do you understand? Dante, promise me. She nodded, though her throat was tight with panic. They waited in the echoing space, the wind outside howling through broken windows. Water dripped from the ceiling, each drop loud as a heartbeat. Then, footsteps. A familiar voice echoed through the shadows. Always dramatic, aren't you, Morello? Ryan stepped into the dim light, flanked by two men. He looked older, thinner, his confidence brittle. Mia's breath caught. Ryan, why? He smirked faintly. Because survival's a game, sweetheart, and I'm tired of losing. You sold us out, Dante said evenly. I traded up. Their eyes locked. The air between them thickened. No shouting, no theatrics, just two men who understood the cost of what they were about to do. Mia wanted to scream to stop it, but before she could move, one of Ryan's men lunged forward. A sound split the air, loud, sharp, final. Not described, not seen, but it froze her to the bone. Dante moved first, pulling her behind him. Go! No! She cried. Now! She hesitated just long enough to see the look in his eyes. Not fear, not rage, but peace. Then she ran. Outside, the rain turned into a downpour. She sprinted across the lot, slipping in puddles, clutching the key in her fist. The world behind her was chaos. Shouts, footsteps, the deep hum of engines. She reached the car, fumbled the key, shoved it into the ignition. Nothing. Her heart stopped. Then, suddenly, headlights flared. Another car pulled up behind her. The driver's door opened. Mrs. Russo. Get in, child, the woman yelled through the rain. Mia didn't ask how or why. She jumped in. They drove until the sounds of the docks were swallowed by distance. Where is he? Mia whispered. Mrs. Russo didn't answer right away. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He told me to keep you safe. That's not what I asked. The woman's silence said enough. Mia pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the baby kick for the first time. It was sudden, fierce, alive. Tears spilled down her face. He promised he'd come back, she whispered. Mrs. Russo's voice softened. Then believe him. 2 days passed before she saw him again. The news reported a disturbance at the docks. No names, no arrests. She didn't need names. She'd spent those hours alternating between fury and grief, whispering prayers into the quiet corners of her apartment. When the knock came, she almost didn't answer. But when she did, there he was, alive, bruised, limping, exhausted, but alive. He smiled faintly, rain dripping from his hair. You didn't think I'd miss our child's first kick, did you? She stared at him, words caught somewhere between anger and relief. You could have died. He stepped closer. So could you. She hit his chest weakly, then again, tears spilling faster. You don't get to vanish and walk back in like nothing happened. I know. Then why? Because I had to finish it, he said quietly. The DeLucas won't touch you again. Or Isla. It's over. How can you be sure? Because I gave them what they wanted. Her stomach nodded. What did you give them? Everything but you. She realized then what he'd done. He'd dismantled his empire, the power, the wealth, the darkness, to buy their peace. "You're free," he said simply. "Both of you." She searched his face. "And you?" He smiled, tired, genuine. "I'll learn how to be free too." Rain hammered against the window again, echoing that first night, the night she'd opened her door to him. Only now, the fear was gone. She took his hand and pressed it to her stomach. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. "Feels like you," she said. He laughed softly. "Then heaven help us both." They stood there for a long moment, no words, just the sound of rain and the rhythm of a heartbeat between them. Mia once thought safety meant walls and locked doors. Now she understood it meant choice. Would you have forgiven him? Not for what he'd done, but for what he gave up to make things right?